Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sarah Smith here on the Sarah Speaks podcast. Welcome to the fourth instalment on the flaws of feminism. So thus far we have covered the importance of bringing dignity back to the role of the mother, and also the way in which the media and politics and various other social institutions, including education, promote feminism, and in fact it's actually doing more damage to women in the long term than good, in my opinion. And then in the last episode I shared my thoughts on the differences between men and women and how they're a good thing and how they should be celebrated and how we can work together as a team and how we're just different, and difference is good, and it doesn't mean one person's better than the other. It just means we're different, and it just means we've got different strengths and different weaknesses and different roles to play. So it's not a bad thing. And this time I thought, we're here in Cornwall Park. I absolutely love this tree. I call this the fairy tree when I come here with children, because this is where I imagine the fairies would live. And they can have their little baths, and they have their little rooms. Look, there's a little fairy room, and here's their little baths. And then you've got this awesome bit where the children can actually go in to that part, and look, they can just climb around here, and this is often a horse, this part of the tree. Hopefully the audio is still good and you can hear me. And then there's all these little nooks and crannies they can go in. They can go in here and have their little kitchen, their little bedroom, and then the older ones can climb up there. Yeah, I absolutely love this tree. I absolutely love this park. It's a real blessing to have this park. And there's almost so many different parts you can explore. So I will try and keep out of the wind again. I actually invested in some really good mics and I still haven't figured out how to use them. I actually need another cable that they didn't come with, so I need to order that off the internet. So basically today I thought, there's so many ways you can discuss the negative consequences of feminism, so many aspects to it, so many angles to it, and I thought today I could touch on the way men have had to look at their shadow sides. Oh, a couple of pigeons. Now the interesting thing that I learned about pigeons is that they mate for life. Those native New Zealand Kiraroo pigeons. I did not know that. Incredible. Yeah, so men have been made to look at their faults, their flaws, their shadow sides, their abuse of power, the bad patriarchy, their violence, their anger issues. But women have not been encouraged to address their shadow sides or their faults or their flaws at all in any real public way. There's been no public discourse about the abuse that women inflict on men and children, and that could be physical, because yes, there are men who get beaten up by women in this country, and it's not talked about. And whilst a tendency towards violence from women is more unlikely compared to men, just biologically speaking, hormonally speaking. It does happen, but what is more common is verbal and emotional abuse. Now, this is a topic that will hit a raw nerve. Women won't want to speak about it. Women won't want to acknowledge it. And that's because they get a lot of their power through verbal control and verbal manipulation. And it's just a fact that women tend to have better verbal skills than men, generally speaking, again. And generally speaking, women can, when you've got a group of women, they'll be firing off on multiple different topics, jumping from here to there. That's just the nature of their minds. They don't necessarily need to have a conversation in a linear fashion. They can quite easily have circular conversations and bounce around and jump back to that topic, and they won't even need to express all the words exactly, and they'll know exactly what they're saying, the other women who are listening. But you do that to a man and you spin him out. You put him in a tailspin if you bring up too many topics at once, and you try and have multiple conversations, and you bring this up from that day and then that happened, and then it's just not. Men have different minds, and that works to a woman's advantage when they're in an argument, because a man will tend to try and fix something. If he's going to have an argument, it's because he wants to fix it. He wants to fix the problem. But she, generally speaking, won't want to fix it. She'll just want to talk about it. And so the more she just talks about it and doesn't actually want to fix anything, the more it pushes him away, and the more he doesn't want to be part of the conversation. The more he'll shut down, the quieter he'll go, and the more she'll pipe up, and she'll just go and go and go and go. And this is a dynamic that many couples get into, and this is a way that women drain men, and this is how they get their power, because they know exactly that they just basically need to talk a man into a corner, and then they can dominate him. And then they wonder why men either storm off and go to the pub or go to the shed or don't want to talk, and then the woman will follow them and say, please just talk about it. I just want to talk about it. Why don't you want to talk about it? And it's because they actually just want to fix something, and if they can't fix it, they need to go away and think about it and just process it. And a friend said to me the other day, yes, men need to think things through, whereas women need to talk things through. And how true is that? So my conclusion is that rather than us as women trying to push men into a state of communication that they don't feel comfortable with, or their brains aren't wired to operate that way, why don't we just be that support for one another, which is often what it was like, right? You'd have your mother around, your sisters around, when you lived more in kind of the community village based living, and women would be preparing them food together and looking after the kids together, and that's where they could have a lot of those conversations and just vent and just talk without really meaning any of it but just getting it out. Whereas trying to force a man into having a discussion when he's not ready or not willing, it just really leads to more and more more and more disharmony. And that's been a massive conditioning that you've got in the New Age movement, is that men are being talked into thinking that they need to sit there and listen constantly to the woman. Just listen. You just need to listen. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's nice when you can have a conversation with your significant other and feel heard and obviously have those connections, and that's part of being in a healthy relationship. But I'm talking about when it becomes abusive, because women are just, generally speaking, better linguists. Well, and this is the other irony of the whole thing, they're not necessarily better at crystallizing ideas and having rational discussions, but they're really quick at talking from topic to topic and coming up with this excuse and that excuse and spinning men around so that it feels like they're winning the topic, the argument. And that's where I suppose a lot of that shifting the goalposts comes in, and we all know what it's like as women, and to be able to not let your emotions get in the way, it takes practice, and to be honest, and to just recognise how we can control. And I haven't even brought up sexuality, obviously. That's the sexual power that women have. They know very much about that, and they certainly know how to use it to their advantage. And unfortunately, men being men, naturally have needs, and they will often not be able to see the manipulation and the power struggles that go on, or they've just been conditioned to accept it. So men, maybe when they're out of alignment and they're out of balance, they get abusive physically. But when a woman is out of balance and out of alignment, she will get abusive emotionally, sexually, maybe even withholding, and putting down and just pushing men to a point where they snap, and then standing back and going, oh, look, what's wrong with you? You've just lost it. You're angry. Oh, you're upset. Oh, calm down. And so it goes on. And this is something that, really needs to be discussed. How women play mind games, quite frankly. And men, unfortunately, because they don't have that same way of thinking, they just often don't see it. And it's a discussion that we need to have as women, because if we want to have healthy relationships with our men, we need to honour our men, and we need to not push them into unnecessary arguments where we can manipulate them, and we need to respect them, and we need to trust them to be the leaders that they are, and we need to learn when to keep our mouths shut, and we need to learn when to go and talk to our sisters or our mothers or our friends about our problems, and not expect our husbands to sit there for hours on end while we just cry and talk about things that we don't want fixed, we just want to talk. It's different when you go to a man and you say, look, I've got this problem, can we discuss it? I just need your thoughts, and how can we best figure it out, how are we going to solve this problem? Then men are great. But going to a man to just talk and to just vent and cry becomes very quickly overwhelming for them, and it actually just can create more distance in a relationship rather than more togetherness. So choosing what we speak to our husbands about in terms of, how much do we want to dump on them, or how much can we actually just process on our own or process with our friends or mothers, is a good thing. And then the other thing, that I'll briefly touch on is the abuse of children. It's very easy to have power and control over children as a woman, and women can say very horrible things to their children, and they might not be physically abusive, but they can certainly psychologically damage their children. And again, it's hard to measure and it's hard to quantify because there's no physical evidence of it, but it's definitely a phenomena, and it definitely happens. And even the over-mothering, the overly the molly-coddling mothers, the helicopter mothers, the mothers that are full of anxiety, that just constantly want to control their children. That's a form of abuse that will lead to psychological issues in a child. So those are my thoughts on the shadow aspects of the female and the abusiveness of the female. And I'm not negating the abuse that men do, and I'm not negating the wonder of women and the amazing qualities of women. I'm just trying to raise some topics that I don't hear discussed, and I think if we want to save our marriages and save our communities and our societies, then it's time we start discussing these issues. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's getting a bit windy again here in Cornwall Park. So please like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment down below, and tell me what you think about feminism. I could talk about this topic for hours, as you can tell. So I'm sure there'll be another installment to come. But with that, I will bid you good night and talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.